Кашу надо сварить, кашу. Насыщенный.
С такой легкой. Сколько стоит?
Ну, чуть дороже страховки моей квартиры.
Огонь.
Защита квартиры по цене кофе. Быстрое оформление в Sberbank онлайн.
Hello, welcome to my channel Medicine with Dr. Morin. If this is your first time visiting, my name is Dr. Keith Morin. Many of my elderly patients have asked me recently what their risk of severe COVID-19 is after full vaccination. Many countries are reporting the numbers of severe infections after full vaccination, but they fail to provide any additional data about what kinds of patients are the ones with these severe breakthroughs. As of October 24, 2021, this is the CDC's data from the USA in regards to this. As you can see from the slide, there have been 10,859 deaths in fully vaccinated people. Of those 10,857 deaths, it was felt that 2,299 were not due to COVID, meaning that they had no symptoms related to the virus, but had a positive test and died because of factors that were not related to COVID. So if you take away these 2,299 people from the 10,857, we are left with 8,558 people in the US who died of COVID-19 while being fully vaccinated. Now, this is a very small number compared to the number of fully vaccinated people in the US, which is currently 190 million. This speaks to the success of the vaccines, of course. If you look at hospitalizations, which would be an indicator of a significant COVID-19 illness, there are 30,217 in total, people who were hospitalized but did not die. Now, what older people want to know are the characteristics of the people that end up in the hospital or die after vaccination. Obviously, these are the people that we better need to protect. It would be helpful to know what kind of health problems, or as we say, medical comorbidities, that these people actually have. There is no information on the CDC site that I can find with respect to this. However, there is a recently published peer-reviewed study in the Lancet. This is the Lancet study, and the authors, I make note, have no disclosures. This was done using the Yale New Haven Health System. And the study authors, what they did was a systematic review of all the people who were admitted to hospital with a positive PCR test between March 23, 2021 and July 1st, 2021. For all of these people, they determined their vaccination status. In total, there were 969 patients who were admitted with a positive PCR. They did not state the total number of hospital admissions during this time, but everybody, when they were admitted, were tested with PCR. Now, this graph shows the breakdown of those 969 people. As expected, the vast majority were unvaccinated, and there were 797 of those people. This is something that we're currently seeing no matter what hospital or medical system or country, that the unvaccinated make up the majority of people hospitalized. Obviously, as more and more would make up the majority of people hospitalized. Obviously, as more and more people get vaccinated, this will change. And what I mean by that is that if 100% of people are vaccinated, then of course 100% of hospital admissions are going to be for COVID-19 in vaccinated individuals. As you can see, 103 people had one dose of Pfizer or one dose of Moderna, and there were 15 people who had received both doses of Pfizer or Moderna or a single dose of J&J, but had not quite gotten up to 14 days after their second injection. So they weren't considered fully vaccinated. This group was called a completed course, meaning they had received their vaccinations but were not past the 14 days. The number of fully vaccinated people, which of course was defined as having your full complement of vaccines and then being out more than 14 days, was 54. Then what they did was to look more closely at these 54 people who were fully vaccinated and had a positive PCR test. Because they were testing every hospital patient who was admitted with PCR testing, it's not surprising that many of these people, of course, were asymptomatic or had very mild symptoms related to the virus. And they actually were being admitted to the hospital for other reasons. In other words, they're being admitted not for COVID-19. Here's the breakdown on the 54 people. As you can see, there were 14 people that had severe disease. Severe disease was defined as people with a low oxygen saturation of less than 94% on the Room-Air, or a respiratory rate of more than 30 breaths a minute, or lung infiltrates greater than 50%. They then looked more closely at these 14 people to see what their comorbidities or other health problems were. Now, of the 14 people, the median age was 80.5 years of age. 4 of the 14 people needed ICU care. 1 required mechanical ventilation, and that means a tube was placed down through the mouth into the trachea to deliver oxygen into the lungs. 3 people of the 14 died. These were the comorbidities that were present in these 14 people. 9 people were overweight or obese. 12 people had cardiovascular disease. 7 people had lung disease. 4 people had cancer. 7 with type 2 diabetes. And 4 people were on a medication that suppressed their immune system.
Всего несколько часов остается до самого ожидаемого и нами праздника, друзья. В основном все празднуют с семьей или друзьями, а кто-то и с семьей, и с друзьями. Это идеальное сочетание. Кстати, если вы все еще бегаете в последние часы по магазинам, поспешите, а то встретите Новый год где-нибудь в очереди. Спасибо, с Новым годом.
Спасибо, и вас также.
This slide looks at these 14 people. Now, there's a lot on the slide, and it may be a little difficult to see if you're watching this on a small cell phone. But as you can see from the ages, these are all elderly people. Many of them were overweight or obese, and a normal BMI is 18.5 up to 25, to put it in perspective. 13 of the 14 people had the Pfizer vaccine, which was the most common vaccine in Connecticut at the time. Only 1 of the 14 received the Moderna vaccination. The total number of vaccines, to give you an idea of Connecticut, were 1.3 million for Pfizer, 1.04 million for Moderna, and 0.27 million for the J&J. Now, based on these small numbers, there's 0.27 million for the J&J. Now, based on these small numbers, there's a much higher percentage of people getting a breakthrough infection after being vaccinated if you had Pfizer versus Moderna. This is deserving of further study. This may very well have to do with the fact that the Moderna vaccine actually contains more messenger RNA, 100 micrograms, compared to Pfizer, which is 30 micrograms of mRNA. And the vaccine actually contains more messenger RNA, 100 micrograms, compared to Pfizer, which is 30 micrograms of mRNA. In addition, Moderna vaccine is given 4 weeks apart instead of the 3 weeks with Pfizer, which is likely another benefit. In my most recent video, which was on vaccine efficacy as well as mix and matching, I presented data from 2 provinces in Canada, both of which found that the sweet spot for the time between the 2 vaccinations actually was 7 to 8 weeks. This is the data for Pfizer from British Columbia, if you didn't watch my last video. There was no additional benefit if you look at the graph, extending this out to 16 weeks between the 2 shots, but clearly 3 to 4 weeks was not as good as 7 to 8 weeks. Here's the data from the other province, Quebec, and you see the same thing happening here for Pfizer and Moderna. In Canada, they did use the AstraZeneca vaccine, and you can see that it took 16 weeks, which is 4 months between shots, actually to get the vaccine efficacy up at preventing infections to Pfizer and Moderna. Now, getting back to the 14 people in the study that I'm talking about, the last 5 columns of the slide looks at comorbidities. And you can see there that patients had multiple comorbidities. There actually was only 1 patient who did not have any of the 5 comorbidities, and in fact was of ideal weight as well. They didn't make any specific comment about this 76-year-old man, but I do wonder whether this person had a comorbidity either not classified or diagnosed at the time. I do hope that there's further studies published on who gets severe breakthrough infections. And this is important because it will allow us to decide who would benefit from a 3rd vaccination. In other words, who needs a little more protection. This is an important thing to research so that we know the benefits of that 3rd injection. And we can balance this also with the risk of getting a 3rd one. It's also important in terms of vaccine equity, as 36% of rich countries are now giving 3rd vaccinations, while 97% of people in low-income countries don't even have their 1st shot. So in summary, the data in this study is exactly what you would expect. The people who get serious breakthrough infections are elderly and have multiple comorbidities. Therefore, it's important to be as healthy as you can be. And if you do have comorbidities, try to reverse those if possible, or at least get these under good medical control. Thank you for joining me today on Medicine with Dr. Morin. I'm Dr. Keith Morin. Get healthy and stay healthy.
Василисе интересно многое. Родителям интересно подарить то, что понравится Василисе. Но как понять, что именно? Подарите Яндекс-станцию Лайф. Всем интересный подарок.
Саня, не волнуйся, за квартиру денежку закинул еще вчера на рыбалку. Да, и штраф.
Okay, well, today we're talking to Kyle, and where are you, Kyle, at the moment, actually?
I'm actually in Boise, Idaho.
Idaho, okay, so that's kind of getting top left-hand corner, is it?
Yeah, it is. It's like the last kind of Pacific Northwest state, I guess you'd say, a little
Yeah,
bit.
Washington State. Yeah, okay. Right, now, we have to let people decide whether they want to watch this video or not. So what's kind of the bottom line on this video, Kyle? Why are we here?
So I'm a professional mountain bike racer, and I was vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine in June of 2021. That was my second dose, and I had a pretty bad adverse reaction. And yeah, I'm just kind of going through the timeline, telling people what my experience was, and then also sharing some resources for other vaccine-injured people.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to be heading to Washington, D.C. in November 2nd, to go speak in front of politicians and try to just make a little difference in the support level for vaccine-injured people, and then also speak about vaccine mandates, because I believe where there is risk, there needs to be choice.
Yes, good, excellent, and of course we're going to put links to all of that. So that's what this video is about. So take us back to the start of this, Carl. You're a famous mountain biker, aren't you? You've got a mountain bike. So you are. You've got mountain bike websites, and
Yeah.
you're in April do all sorts of mountain bike stuff. So you're a really fit guy, basically.
Yeah, I was actually a professional racer for many years. I'm 29 years old, and I've been a professional racer since I was 18. Three-time North American Enduro Tour champion. So at a high level, it was my job for the past 10 plus years. And then it was really interesting because during COVID, all of the races got canceled in 2020. And so my girlfriend, April, she's like such a trooper. She loves learning new things, and she used to race motorcycles, motocross. And so we started a YouTube channel, and I just thought it'd be fun to upload some how-to videos to get people through the pandemic. And then it just took off. And so it grew from nothing to basically 250,000 in the past year.
Yeah.
And so, now that's kind of our full-time thing, is making videos and help people learn.
No, that's great. I ride a bike about 2-3 times a week, but not a serious thing to do. So it sounds like you're one of the fittest people on the planet before you had this difficulty. You're basically a professional athlete.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah. Anyway, so you had the first Pfizer vaccine. When was that, Kyle? What's the timeline?
So that would have been the middle of May.
That would have been May.
Yeah, middle of May was my first dose, and everything went pretty normal. First dose, had a sore arm the next couple days, no big deal. And then our second dose was June 10th. The reason we had got vaccinated was, to be able to travel with our channel this year. We were going to try to travel internationally and just meet up with a bunch of different friends and sponsors along the way. So it was kind of a must-have to travel at that point. June 10th was my second dose. My girlfriend April got vaccinated at the same time, and she had, same reaction as the first time with the sore arm. And then for me, it was a little bit interesting because as soon as they kind of injected it, I had a weird metallic or like saline taste in my mouth develop. And I kind of asked the guy, hey, is that normal? He's like, no, I don't really hear that much. So it was really interesting. Like, I wonder what that was, And then a day or two later, I didn't really develop the sore arm either. And so I was like, this one's no big deal. I guess the second dose is a lot easier than the first. And then about 2 weeks later, I started to have some weird, just kind of reactions to my heart. And so what was happening to me is throughout the day, I could just be standing there or sitting there, and I would just have these weird flushes of like really high heart rate and kind of almost like an anxiety attack.
How did your heart rate was high, Kyle? What happened?
I wear a Garmin watch, so I had like a Garmin watch. I track all of my sleep and everything, and so I was pretty on top of it. And I noticed my resting heart rate went from low 50s up to like 60ish, and I was like, that's interesting. And then my heart rate throughout the day, when I would have those kind of moments, it was kind of in the 90s to 100, just sitting there, and that's not very normal for me. So I was pretty cognizant of it, and right away I just cut out all stimulants. So no caffeine, no, tried to reduce everything just to cut out stimulants, because I thought maybe there's just something weird happening. And then I took 2 weeks off completely of like riding, doing anything, because I felt kind of crappy. And then we went for a bike ride about 2 weeks after that. And on the bike ride, started out normal. I was feeling a little bit kind of iffy, just lightheaded a little bit. And I went on the bike ride, and my heart rate kind of went up on start of the climb. We climbed for maybe 5 minutes. My heart rate got up to like 160, and then it wouldn't come down no matter what I did. and it just felt like I was going to throw up, and I felt just really weak. And I was actually with a friend, his name's Bill, and he's in his 40s, and he just looked at me, he grabbed my shoulder, he's like, "You're going to the hospital, you look like you're going to die." And so I was like, "Okay, look, I'm down." And I did, and it just felt like I was going to throw up, and I felt just really weak. And I was actually with a friend, his name's Bill, and he's in his 40s, and he just looked at me, he grabbed my shoulder, he's like, "You're going to the hospital, you look like you're going to die." And so I was like, okay. So we were in Sun Valley, Idaho, which is 2 hours away from Boise. So we drove back to Boise. The whole time, those 2 hours, my heart rate never went below 135, and it just stayed up for 2 hours. Got home, I couldn't even really walk out of the car to like get dressed because we had biking clothes on. So I got dressed, I was at 150, 160 heart rate, just trying to walk around the house. And then I went to the hospital, and I told them, "Hey, I know this is weird. I just read about the myocarditis, pericarditis with the mRNA vaccines. I think I might be having this reaction." And they basically just said, "No, you're not." Like, he literally said, "No, you're not. That's very rare. You're having an anxiety attack. Like, I'll admit you, but you're not a priority right now." So I sat in the waiting room for like 3.5 hours, just sitting there, like holding my heart, like, oh,
This was a doctor, Kyle, was it?
It was at the emergency room at a hospital in Boise called St. Alphonsus.
Yeah,
And
so it was a doctor that told you you were having a panic attack.
yeah, exactly. And then I told him, "Hey, I'm not. Like, I know my body, this isn't normal. Something's happening, and all of the side effects I'm having are in correlation with the side effects I read about." Because I think the day prior to this big instance is when the World Health Organization did an official warning. So I was kind of just paying attention to that, and then I told him, "Hey, this is what's happening." They said, "No, you're not." I was in the hospital for a few hours. They actually gave me a big shot of Toradol, which is an anti-inflammatory, because I was having like the reactive arthritis as well. And so it gave me a huge shot of Toradol, and it brought everything down. And my heart rate went from like 130 to 110. And he pointed at the thing. He's like, "Look, you're doing better." I'm like, "No, I'm not."
Still double your normal, isn't it? More than.
Yeah, I'm like, "Dude, my average heart rate is like 55 to 60. So this is double. I don't know what you're used to seeing, but this isn't normal for me." And yeah, he just told me, "I'm going to recommend you to a psychiatrist. I think you're having a psychotic episode," and just sent me on my way.
He said it was psychotic.
Yeah, because he thought that I was imagining things and basically trying to be like anti-vax or conspiracy theorist because of the way that I just said, "Hey, I think this is vaccine related." And at that time, they hadn't seen any at that hospital yet, to my knowledge. And so they sent me home. I had a lot of people reach out to me because I kind of shared, "Hey, this is what's going on with me." I got access to ivermectin, and I started to take that right away just because I heard a lot of people say, "Hey, this might kind of hold the spike proteins hostage and just arrest the reaction that you're having." So I started taking that. It helped a lot. It like basically stopped my symptoms from getting worse. I didn't get a lot better, but it just like put a placeholder on it. And then I ended up in the hospital 4 days later for a second time. I went to a different hospital this time. And I had a really, really strong squeeze on my heart. Like, it just cramped and then just started burning kind of uncontrollably. And yeah.
It's just quite severe pain,
Yeah, it was scary because we actually were trying to, it was the first time I'd been out of the house in a few days from that first ER visit. And we were at the grocery store, and I was just trying to get a little bit of food. And I was like walking super slow, and I grabbed some fruit and I was putting it in a bag. And then my heart cramped, and I just like dropped everything and just grabbed it and just like talked to April, my girlfriend, and said, "Hey, this isn't good. Like, we're going to the hospital again." And yeah, this time they actually believed me and said, "Hey, it could be this, this is possible, and let's investigate it as if it is this." And so they referred me to a cardiologist, and I was diagnosed with pericarditis, and also I developed POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, as well as the reactive arthritis that I've been dealing with.
So the arthritis came on after the injection as well, did it?
Yeah, and it was weird because being a mountain biker, I've had a lot of injuries and crashes over the years, and so it almost felt like all of my old injuries were reactivated. So I broke my SI joint a long time ago. Both sides of my SI joint were like excruciating pain. I couldn't even get up out of bed in the morning. And then both my ankles, both my wrists, like my wrists were so bad I couldn't even put my seatbelt on. So I had April help me put my seatbelt on. And then it's gotten a little bit better over the past few weeks, but I'm been supplementing with like some black seed oil, and that's what people have been telling me to really use. Is the black seed oil kind of blocks the ACE2 receptors, so that's been helping a lot. And yeah, every time we just start throwing supplementation at it and try to really mitigate the spike protein reaction, which is what I believe is happening, then it really helps a lot. But I can overdo it so easy and just like relapse right away. So it's kind of scary.
So this started 10th of June, 2 weeks after that. So this is June, July, August, September, October. So 4 months now you've been really quite ill.
Yeah, 4 months. I haven't really been able to work as far as, even doing videos and whatnot, because it's really interesting. But even like mental energy, if I have too much mental energy, so sitting and doing emails and stuff, I can actually relapse my physical reaction. So I think there's been 3 or 4 times where I felt really great, and I kind of told April in the morning, like, oh, I think I'm better. And I get excited, and then either I overdo it physically just by like running errands, or even if I try to like start editing a video or something, then the next day I'll just be kind of in pain for a few days and in bed again.
So you kind of wiped out with the effort.
Yeah, and it sucks that it's mental effort as well, because it's like no matter what I try to do, even if I like read and I read too much of a book or something, the next day I'll just be like so drained. So I feel like very I don't know, I just feel so worthless. And I told April, like, I'm so sorry that this happened so many times, because we had all these plans, and then this will happen, and I basically just been kind of worthless for 4 months. But we are starting to get a little bit better, which I'm really excited about, especially once I started supplementing with the black seed oil. A woman from an organization called react19.org, she reached out to me after my video that I posted on YouTube, and she said, hey, thanks for sharing your story. These are the things that have been helping people that we know of so far, and that was one of the big ones, and that's been helping me a lot.
Of course, we'll post the links to this if it helps anyone else. Then that's great. So you're still pretty. You're not right now by any means, are you? I mean, what does the cardiologist think? Does he think you're going to get gradually better, or what?
Yeah.
What's the prognosis?
So in August, I actually did a cardiac MRI, and my heart was cleared of all the pericarditis, so I didn't have any more swelling present in my heart, which was really good. That was a huge sign. But I was still struggling with all of the POTS symptoms. So like going from laying to standing, really high heart rate, and also like blacking out.
So your heart rate was going up to like 140 or something when you stood up?
Yeah, it was bad. Like I would even try to just cook like scrambled 2 eggs, and I'd be at 125, 130 heart rate without pass out. So they told me, I did a stress test in September where they looked at my heart and said, your heart looks great, but the POTS symptoms are going to last for a while. And he told me just to kind of hang in there. It should get better in a year to like 12 to 18 months is what he told me.
Well, it's a long time though for your line of work, isn't it?
Yeah, and then he did tell me that there are some things you can do to try to help, which is like stay very hydrated. A lot of electrolytes, compression leggings to try to help basically just your body. And then also he told me to start exercising with like supine position, so leg press or rowing or swimming. So that's why I got like a little rowing machine.
Okay.
But so I'm starting, like I can do 10 minutes on the easiest setting on that now. And then
so you exercise actually lying back as if you're on the sort of recumbent bicycle?
Yeah, a little bit like that, because then you're not having to pump the blood so high. But if I try to like walk or ride a bike or anything, I just am out of bed. Drains me.
So your exercise tolerance is improving, you feel? That's good stuff.
Yeah, very slowly. And one thing that's interesting is from a lot of the people that have reached out to me, I've probably had around 50 to 60 injured people reach out to me over the past 4 months, like kind of 30 before my big YouTube video update, and then about 30 after. And so it seems like most people at the 9-month mark, they really start to feel like drastically better for whatever reason. So a lot of people have just been saying, hey, this happened to me early in 2021. It's about October now. So like people that got the shot January, February, they're telling me that it seems like I'm better now that it's been 8 or 9 months. And so that was really interesting. There's kind of this weird, like artificial time limit on this whole reaction from what I've seen so far.
Let's hope so. Now, we know that you were diagnosed with what we call a pericardial effusion, Carl, weren't you? Now, that is, the pericardium is the tough fibrous sac around the heart. Then there's the heart inside that, and you've got fluid in between the two. And that was a definite problem. Did you have to have that aspirated, or did that go away on its own?
No, I was very lucky. So because I was so in tune with my body, and we kind of got this all, we caught it very early. My cardiologist was kind of telling me, hey, you're really lucky because your troponin level, which is a marker of heart damage, I guess like you said, it's on the myocardium versus the pericardium, but the troponin level I had was like a 0.8, and they told me, anything above a 1 is considered damage. And so I was right on the cusp of that, and he told me that he's had 5 or 6 guys come in with levels of 25 to 30 of really high troponin levels and really severe heart damage, and they have all kind of gone through the same process of trying to get better. But he told me I was very lucky that I came in so early and caught it. So, yeah.
So it sounds like your condition is mostly the pericarditis. Maybe some minimal myocarditis, but not significant myocarditis in the actual muscle of the heart, compared to some of these other guys who have troponins 30 times higher than yours were. And troponin comes from damage of the myocardium. Troponin comes from damage of troponins 30 times higher in the actual muscle of the heart, compared to some of these other guys who have troponins 30 times higher than yours were. And troponin comes from damage of the myocardium. So that indicates that I'm hoping your myocardium is pretty good shape.
Yeah, I'm hoping so as well. And they originally did an EKG and a CKG on me to check if I had any weird arrhythmias or anything, and they couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
Then they did an echocardiogram, and he was reluctant to order the echocardiogram because he's like, I don't think you're going to have anything. I don't believe that you're going through this reaction. They did the echocardiogram, found the pericarditis, and then I did a cardiac MRI, and I did a CT scan of my heart as well as radiation with the radioactive fluid. And yeah, it was. So I've had it looked at a million different ways, and they all said it looks really good. So I was very lucky in that aspect. But now I'm just kind of trying to get back to normal with the POTS symptoms, and then also the reactive arthritis.
Sure. I mean, how
the POTS symptoms, and then also the reactive arthritis.
Sure. I mean, how let's do those one at a time. And do you feel the POTS is getting a bit better?
Yeah.
Let's do those one at a time. And do you feel the POTS is getting a bit better?
Yeah.
Gradually. And don't let me put words in your mouth. If it's not, tell me.
No, it's really interesting. So like I said, on the days where I wake up and I feel pretty good, maybe I'll go for 3 or 4 days where I'm bedridden and just kind of in and out of bed for most of the time. And then I'll have a breakthrough where I feel really good, and I don't really have any of the POTS symptoms during those good days. Like, I'm pretty functional, but then, like I said, if I just overdo it a little bit, then I get back into that system, and then I do experience the POTS symptoms quite a bit. So it's just this weird reaction where, like, it comes and goes in waves, and that's what's really difficult about it is I'm not sure how to manage it completely, and I'm trying so many different things. And originally we started with ivermectin, which seemed to help temporarily. But what's interesting with that is it kind of, as soon as you stop taking it, then all the symptoms just come back. And so I had a doctor explain to me that it seems like the ivermectin is kind of holding those spikes hostage and stopping them from interacting with your body, but it doesn't eliminate them. And so once the ivermectin's gone, then it just kind of lets the spikes free flow again. And so then the other thing that we started trying was ACE2 receptor blocking. Like pine needle tea and star anise, and now this black seed oil. And those have been the most effective for me. And so, I started just drinking like a star anise tea. That's like a Chinese fruit from a pine tree. And I started making tea with that, and that helped a ton. And then like Thuja occidentalis, that's another kind of supplement that I would take, and that seemed to help quite a bit. So I'm trying to manage it, but then it's hard because you're taking so many things,
Yeah. I mean, and of course you don't
manage it, but then it's hard because you're taking so many things,
Yeah. I mean, and of course, your doctor could prescribe drugs that would do that more specifically as well.
Yeah.
You did those.
I've been asking pretty seriously for months, and what's hard is my primary doctor, she told me, hey, my hands are kind of tied because there's not an official treatment for this. There's not a treatment protocol. So she told me basically, I'm not going to prescribe anything that's not officially, the right thing to do. So it's hard. And then it's been interesting to see her, her name's Susan, but it's really interesting to see her perspective shift over the past 3 months, because when I first came in, she was kind of saying, hey, this is really rare. I haven't seen anybody with this. Then month number 2, when I did my checkup, she's like, I'm kind of seeing this a little bit more. It's really interesting. Please send me any information that you find. I'd love to read about it and learn more. And then month 3, she's like, this is a problem, and we need to figure this out. And it's just the way that my insurance is structured. It's with the state, so it's really difficult for them to prescribe things that aren't
right. Yeah. So your condition is evolved with the state of medical knowledge, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So that was the plot. So secondly, the arthritis. What joints are affected most, Brian?
For me personally, it's like the last 4 vertebrae in my kind of lumbar spine, and then both of my SI joints, so both sides of my hip, pelvis, both my wrists, both my ankles, and then sometimes my right collarbone. But I've broken this several times, so it's not too surprising on that one.
So it is kind of old injuries then that have re-inflamed.
Yeah, and that's what's so weird is I've broken my right wrist. I've really severely sprained my left wrist. I've torn the ligaments in both ankles. I've messed up my SI joint. I've had all these different injuries over the years, but it just brought all of them back. And it almost feels like when I wake up, I'm just re-broken. And I haven't, it's been years since that happened. So it's not like I'm in constant pain normally before this vaccine.
No.
I was totally normal, functional, and kind of a go-getter. And then just since this happened, I've just been, I just feel super weak and worthless, which is hard to feel because I'm one of those guys that wants to like do things and help and be active. And, yeah.
Well, I can understand that, but of course your worth is not determined by what you can do. Your worth is determined by who you are. But I know how you feel. You want to get stuff done, don't you? I mean, that's...
Yeah, and I will say that this whole thing has been like such a great learning experience. For one, just understanding more about how the body works, and for two, just really understanding how much there is a need for support groups. And that's been really interesting for me. Is I've had a lot of people message me, even after my last YouTube video. And one guy, he's like in his 20s, and he told me, hey, I have all the same symptoms. I've been dealing with this for 6 weeks, and I'm scared to tell my family because I don't want them to disown me, because they're very big believers in the vaccine. And that's kind of what was hard. Is like my mom was very pro-vaccine, and we got it. And when I was telling her at first, she almost was kind of like, I don't really believe that this is happening to you. And then as it's developed, she was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to so many other people. So like I said, that's why I just kind of took a break and waited. So this happened. My big reaction was early July, and then I waited a few months to say anything really, just because I figured nothing was going to age well. And also the understanding of this being an issue has been getting more and more uncovered,
And the other thing I think is if there's any possibility of this inflammatory reaction, I think it's quite important not to exercise. And that's kind of one of the messages we want to get out. You only start exercising when a doctor tells you can, or preferably a cardiologist tells you can start exercising again, because until then there's a greater risk that people are exercising when they have heart inflammation. We don't want to be doing that. Now I want to talk about these support groups in a minute, but before we do that, you mentioned this metallic taste in the mouth. Now, how long after the vaccine was put in your arm did you get a metallic taste in your mouth?
So I had a slight metallic taste almost within 30 seconds of administration of the vaccine, and then they tell you to hang out around the store. We did at a pharmacy, and they told me to hang out for 15 minutes, and it was kind of present for that whole entire 15-minute period, and even later into the day. So about 2-3 hours later, I still had this lingering things, and I was actually trying to like chase it down with different drinks. I was like, oh man, this is so weird that I'm feeling this. But like I said, I asked them if this is normal. They said no. I haven't really heard of that much. And then now talking to a few other injured people, they've had similar experiences as well. And so like you said in your video about aspiration, I don't know if maybe that's a sign that they really did just hit a blood vessel or artery or vein and injected it into my circular system,
I mean, the fact that a clinician doesn't realize that a metallic taste in the mouth could be a sign of an inadvertent intravascular administration concerns me. Yeah, because what happens is if the vaccine goes into your muscle, then it stays in your muscle, and it's going to take, from an intramuscular injection, it's going to take half an hour to be systemically absorbed at all, or much longer than that. But if it goes into a vessel, you get a metallic taste straight away. Now, this has happened to me many times when I've been giving intravenous injections at work. When you mean to be giving intravenous injections, and people often say particular antibiotics, for example, or vitamin preparations, they can say, I can taste that. That happens, like as you say, about 20 seconds after the injection. So the fact that you could taste that straight away, to me, is very suspicious of them inadvertently giving that into a blood vessel. The only other thing I can think of which will cause a reaction in the mouth straight away is an allergic reaction. Did you have any other features of an allergic reaction? Did you go red? Were you itchy? Did you go dizzy at the time?
No, I had no other features of it. And like I kind of said earlier, on the first dose, I developed a sore arm a couple days later, and I was like, oh man, this is kind of gnarly actually. And then the second time I was like, I feel great, I'm totally fine. In April, my girlfriend, she had a sore arm, and it's kind of like, oh man, it's really getting me the second time. And I was like, I don't feel it at all. So I thought I handled it really well, but maybe they just injected it into my vein.
Well, it's certainly possible. I mean, so basically you're having the inflammatory reaction in your heart and your joints instead of in your arm, which of course is where you prefer to have it. So I think that really is suspicious that part of the reason that you have this problem is that vaccine could have been given into a blood vessel.
Yeah, and I
don't think we'll ever know, but I think it's possible.
Yeah, I shared your video on aspiration on my Instagram page, and I had about 10 to 12 nurses kind of message me and go, oh my God, I've been taught this my whole life and I don't know why we're not doing it. I didn't even think about that. And this is so helpful. Please, like, thank you so much for sharing this info. I'll pass it along. And so I had all these people reach out and go, yeah, I know to do this. Why am I not doing this? You know, like, why are they saying to not do this? So it was kind of interesting.
Yeah. But no, thank you for sharing your suffering with us, Kyle. It's a brave thing to do.
Yeah, and it was weird because one nurse told me, you know, hey, I've never seen someone do an aspiration on intramuscular injection. He's like, it just doesn't really make sense. And I was like, well, have you ever given an mRNA injection before? You know, like, this is the first time that these have been really around. So maybe it's
that's right. These are microparticulates. Even the adenovirus vector vaccines and the messenger RNA vaccines. By definition, the messenger RNA vaccines have to be given in like a little droplet, so it gets into the cells, and that is a microparticulate, and that gets into the circulation, and we know that can cause inflammatory problems. So I really am suspicious that this was at least part of the reason that you have this appalling problem.
Yeah.
Now, go ahead, Carl. Yeah.
Oh no, I was just about to listen.
Yeah. So tell us about this event that's coming up in Washington.
Yeah, so it was actually really a cool opportunity came out of sharing my story on YouTube, which, like you said, is very scary, especially in the time of censorship right now. And so I tried to be very neutral with my story and just say my personal facts of what happened to me.
Yes.
And a woman who's working with a group called react19.org, they are working directly with the FDA and the NIH on vaccine injury, and they've been working with them. She was actually, Brianne, the lady who runs this, she was injured in December or November of 2020. She was one of the first clinical trial patients. And so she was injured, and she was one of the first injured people in America. And so she's been working on this for, almost a full year now. And the FDA and NIH have had studies saying that this is possible reaction since December of 2020. And so there's really this big push to kind of, hey, please acknowledge that this is an actual thing, because for one, it's hard when you are someone affected and the doctors don't even know that this is a thing.
Sure.
Like what happened to me, they just sent me on my way. And for two, the only thing they're actually acknowledging
Да нет, вообще, ну, ну, так, да, ну, да, ну, Да нет, да, какая-то есть там правда. Да, да, это есть тот самый. Да нет, да, да. Вот она, да, упс, худо. Че, я хуже всех, что ли? Говорю, ты молчал. Нет. Да. Все хорошо. Спасибо, Игорь. Не понимаю, конечно. Да.
The COVID variant Omicron is exploding all across the globe, just sweeping. We're starting to see cases and even deaths mount. How bad is it? Let's go find out. Hello, everyone. Dr. Chris Martinson here, back with you. I'm wearing my red and my green because we're doing this on December 22nd. You can feel that Christmas in my household. Happy holidays, everybody who's watching this holidays. If you're watching afterwards, hopefully some of this turned out to be prophetic. But let's take a quick peek. Omicron, what is it? You know, we've been trying. Is it a huge disaster? It is. It's a giant disaster, but really only for the data hesitant. That's my name for people who don't want to look at the data. By the way, we're breaking out the honey badger again, because this Omicron variant absolutely qualifies as the honey badger. It is unstoppable. It is not caring about vaccination status. Looks to be about as transmissive as measles, by which I mean it's explosive. So let's go take a look at this data, see where it is. But first, well, I think I want to start here, and so I'm going to get a drawing tool out so I can draw. This, I just pulled these today off of Google, and check this out. Bill Gates on Omicron. We could be seeing or entering the worst part of the pandemic. Bill Gates has canceled most of his holiday plans due to Omicron. You know what? I would care more about what Bill Gates thought if he actually graduated college or actually had a science degree or actually practiced science or was a doctor or something. But he's none of those things. So I actually don't really care what Bill says. But I do care that he makes a lot of money off of this whole thing. And he seems to find a way to always be telling us how bad and how awful and how scary this whole thing is. How about this? CNN says Britain battles Omicron tidal wave. Tidal waves are pretty bad things. As infections double every 2 to 3 days and first death, singular, from variant is recorded. Below that, CNN, Omicron spreading fast. That's alarming, even if it is mild. No, it's actually, if it's mild, it's not alarming at all. We'll cover why in just a second. AP News, virus fears widen as Omicron variant takes hold across U.S. Pretty dim picture of a bunch of, cold-looking, blue lighting, masked up people. And then over here in my home state, Boston Globe says Omicron now dominant in Massachusetts. We asked experts at the recent COVID surge. So you can see the language here. This isn't cherry picking. This is what shows up when I just say Omicron variant constrained the search to the most recent week. It's just headlines like this. This is just what shows up. They're completely unwarranted. Here's why. Let's go there. First, really, really nice. I have to give props whenever I see it. The UK Health Security Agency, the HSA, has done a really good job giving us data around all kinds of things, the Delta variant beforehand, vaccination status and surveillance, and now Omicron surveillance. They have a whole report out on it. I like it because it gives us data we can look at. So let's look at it really quickly here. This is the most recent report that's coming out here. It's current up through, I believe, the 20th of December. And yep, it says so right down here, up through, let me make sure I got this one. Yeah, up through the 20th of December. Okay. So what do we see here? First, they have what they're calling confirmed Omicron cases. They've done the complete sequencing of the samples they get, and they see that they have Omicron. It's confirmed. Now, we also have these things called the PCR tests, which are reasonably accurate, provided you don't overcycle them, and you don't go with a cycle threshold of maybe 30-ish tops. I can't tell you what protocol they're using here, but I will tell you that this thing right here, the SGTF, these are putative Omicron cases. And I'm going to explain what that means in just a second so you can see. And at any rate, what are we seeing here? In England, 56,000 confirmed Omicron cases. So this is just a daily up. I mean, it's just exploding right now. And they have 118,000 total. And so you can see from previous report, 14,000 cases coming in from the day before. Another 14,000 here. It's just massive cases. So they're recording roughly, I don't know, I think it's closing in on 90,000 cases of COVID per day in the UK. As I'm going to show you from this report, the vast majority of those now, as in 3/4, are Omicron. So this is just how they're reporting it here, and they have a lot of these. So what is this SGTF? Why is this a putative case? So we have to understand something about the PCR test itself and how it's conducted. So I put a little something together. This SGTF stands for S gene target failure. So when the you get a PCR test. You know, they put this little swab right up your nose, and then they get a sample out, which has all kinds of your DNA, but it also has some of that viral RNA in it. And then they take that viral RNA, convert it back into DNA, and begin amplifying and amplifying and amplifying it. So the way they do that is they take a little stretch of DNA or nucleic acid material that would match some part, some very specific part of the virus that you wouldn't find in any other virus. And so if it matches those, you say, oh, well, it had to come from that. Now, when you have an S target failure, they actually have 3 separate parts of the virus they're looking for in one of these PCR tests. They have a little piece here from the RDRP, that's the reverse the reverse ribonuclease reverse enzyme, and they have a little bit from the S protein, and they have a little bit from the N protein. And so they're looking for this RDRP, looking for the S, they're looking for the N. Well, Omicron is so different that they can highly conserve sections, but the S doesn't match anymore because it's that different. It's part of the reason why current antibodies from current don't work so well in stopping this. In fact, don't work at all, according to some data, because they're targeted right at this S thing, the spike protein, and that's the part that isn't even matching when they're doing the polymerase chain reaction, the PCR test. So that's why you get stuff like this. You're saying, well, we confirmed a bunch of cases because we sequenced them, but then we had all of these PCR tests that we were doing that just didn't match at all, and we're calling those the S gene target failure, the SGTF cases. Pretty likely those are on. So this plus this little category plus this, those 2 columns together, that's Omicron. All right, so with that as a background, it's already 3/4 of the cases from the same report. This is total COVID cases with known S gene status, so this is definitely Omicron, and the SGTF cases. And when you look at this, the percent of this, yeah, they're already well over 3/4 on average when you go down this whole line right here. Look at London, 89.7% fall in of everything that they're doing here, saying, yeah, this is Omicron. So Omicron just got to the UK not that long ago. It's already 89% of the cases they're detecting, let's call it 90, in London. So it swept through and it exploded in really quick and hard. In fact, how quick and hard, the doubling time, this is astonishing, is averaging anywhere from, what's the lowest on here? 1.7? Do we get lower than that? Oh, 1.67. So let's call it around 1.7 days and a high of closing in on 3 days-ish, but somewhere around 2 days, doubling. That means if it went from 1,000 cases to 2,000 cases in just 2 days, and then it goes to 4,000 and 8, 16, and so on and so forth, within about 7 doublings usually, you pretty much got the whole place covered. By 10 or 20 doublings, you're all done. So that means we could say, well, what's 20 doublings? 40 days. So if this continues at this particular pace, which I don't think it will, but if it did, basically the whole country gets it, no avoiding it. That's what we've been saying for a while. Nobody's going to avoid this thing. We're all going to get our turn with it. So I think that's an okay thing, because I'm going to show you the behind that next. This is actually some of the best news I've seen so far. We've been tracking this for a while, wondering, early returns from Omicron didn't look that bad. So fingers crossed, we were saying, hey, this could be a very good thing. Highly transmissive, but without that much pathology associated with it. That's the best of all worlds if, and here's the one thing we don't know, if the antibodies that your body develops and the natural immunity your body develops, whether it's naive, meaning you haven't had a vaccine, whether you've already had COVID of some other variant, or you've had a shot or some combination of those last two, plus we put Omicron on top of that, does that actually give us extra immunity? I think so. I don't have the data for that yet, so that's just a guess, but that's both what I hope and what I think. So looking at this, here's something really interesting. So when they're sequencing all these cases, you can see how many cases they have. I think this is just their testing week. I think people come in for tests on Monday. I think that's why you see this little cadence to it right here. It's a weekly cadence. All of a sudden, this is Omicron coming in, the SGTF and presumptive cases. Look at that explosion. What you're going to notice if you look at this carefully with me, let me back this up, is that if Omicron was just a pure additive, meaning you had all these other variants and now we've got Omicron too, you would see these bars stack on top of each other. we don't see that. What we see is the purple begins to pay the green. So the purple bar here is larger than this green bar, and it's purple's larger than this green bar and this one. So what's happening is this is very good news. It's baked into this chart. It's saying that people are getting one or the other, but if you get Omicron, you're not getting the other one too, because we would see that, because some people would be detectable. They would have both variants in them, and you'll be able to detect that. I'm not seeing data for that. What it is saying is that people are showing up. They have the Omicron variant within them, and they are SGTF. They are the S gene target failure, meaning they're not showing up with that S gene in there. So because of that, we can clearly say that Omicron is out-competing the other variants, and it's an either or, according to this chart. You're either going to have Omicron or you're going to have the other one. I can't tell you if you have the other one plus Omicron, because your S gene would light up, and they would have to sequence both of those out of you. I haven't seen any evidence that they've sequenced people and are saying, oh my gosh, they have Delta and they have Omicron. What we're seeing right now, either or, and that's very, very good news. And the second thing you're going to notice from this is this shape. So let me undo that so I can draw this more clearly. This is the explosive rise we've been hearing about breathlessly in the news, but you can clearly see that this is already peaked out. Now, is that a false peak? Is it going to explode even further from here? Christmas, people at home, large gatherings, partying, a lot of eggnog, possible. But for now, what it looks like is that it's come and peaked. Here's a closer look at that. They are breaking this now by region, all these different regions, Northwest, Northeast, East Midlands, etc. And so you can see that same shape here. Huge explosive rise, and it seems to be coming back down again. So that's good news. It would probably support a hypothesis that says Omicron is so transmissive that whether you've had prior infection or not, whether you've had vaccination or not, it seems to just come in and sweep through. That's what we're seeing here so far. All right, now where else have we seen that? We're seeing that same behavior in South Africa, but we've got a little extra detail there, which is cool. This Delta wave was very bad. Killed a lot of people, came in, had this explosive rise. These are where you were hearing all sorts of really bad news reports, like, oh my God, death and destruction. And of course, what happened, just like every other wave, it kind of went away as fast as it went up. And the interesting part is it took 52 days from sort of the turn the corner phase of this, where it starts to grow exponentially, 52 days to peak before the peak went away. Same thing here. Here's where Omicron starts, ramps up, very sharp fall off in the peak. Let me take that away so you can keep your eye on it. That was half, 25 days. So this is confirming the idea that we have a really, really explosively transmitted, high R0, super virulent in terms of transmissivity virus. Might as well be measles going into a daycare where nobody has any measles vaccinations. It's astonishing how fast this thing really spread. So that's what we see there. Now, the issue, though, is that even though these are like, look at all these cases. This is however many were detected. And by the way, most people are reporting that the symptoms of Omicron is like cold. So a lot of people aren't even getting tested. But many, many people have caught this thing. And here we are a number of weeks into it. And on December 22nd, a recent report from Reuters says there are currently 129 people in the hospital with the Omicron variant of the coronavirus so far, and 14 people have died with it. Now, why am I emphasizing with? Well, you know why. All we know for sure is that somebody's in the hospital and they've been detected to have Omicron. Are they in the hospital because they had a stroke and then they also found out they had Omicron? Are they in the hospital because they fell off their bicycle? There are some people like that in this story, but look at how pathetically small, wonderfully pathetically small these numbers are. 129 and 14, this is nothing like what we were seeing during the Delta wave. Nonetheless, Health Minister Cillian Keegan says UK government would not hesitate to bring further COVID-19 restrictions if the data showed it was necessary. Good news. First crack in the narrative where we're seeing that they're saying, maybe the data isn't saying we need all these restrictions, because 129 and 14 people in the hospital are dying with COVID. These are very tiny numbers. It's absolutely, as tragic as it is in these individual cases, it's even a larger tragedy to take a nation of 60 million people and lock them all down because there are relative handful of casualties and even deaths. And again, with not of whole story there, we won't go back through that, you know that story. Prime Minister Boris Johnson said on Tuesday he would not introduce new restrictions in England before Christmas, probably politically smart, but the situation remained extremely difficult and the government might need to act afterwards. So they're keeping their options open to act here. There's nothing in this data so far to suggest they need to. So let's look at some of that data next. Here's some of it. This is just one report from some doctors out of New Delhi who are saying in India the symptoms caused by both Omicron and SARS-CoV-2, they're very, very different. For example, doctors treating patients affected by the new variant in Delhi say Omicron does not cause loss of taste or smell. Interesting, that's what they're noticing. So if you have COVID-like symptoms and you lose taste or smell, you might have the much more dreaded Delta variant. It's a very different beast, and it needs your full attention. This does too, but I mean, it really does if you got the Delta. So that's a big change. That's a really big change because what we're seeing too is that Omicron does not really replicate all that well deeper in the lung tissue. It does much better in the bronchi, that large tube that feeds into the lungs, and also in the nasopharyngeal area. So the fact that it doesn't cause loss of taste or smell is a very important clue. We're going to have to chase it down. I could guess wildly as to why that might be, but my easy guess is it's not invading the tissues in the same way as the earlier variants. Okay, and it's competing away those earlier variants. So I think it's the best of both worlds. Let's keep going. They say here in green, quote, we have treated 24, just a handful, a couple dozen, Omicron positive patients so far, but only 2 were symptomatic. 1 had low-grade fever, sore throat, headache, body ache. The other suffered from a sore throat and loose motions. I think we can guess what that is. Their condition improved with symptomatic treatment, and none of them required steroids, antiviral drugs, or oxygen therapy. So this is from Dr. Suresh Kumar, medical director of Lok Nayak Hospital. So it's a cold. We've had colds before, people. The whole idea that we would even be considering locking countries down because of what appears to be very much like a cold-like symptom. All right, but that's anecdotal, right? 24 observational patients. This doctor's like, well, looks like a cold to me. That's what we've been treating. But we have bigger data. This is from London. Here we can see this is the percent of COVID patients requiring mechanical ventilation. And you can see here it goes from anywhere from 20%, dipped as low as, I don't know what we would call that, maybe 12% or something, shot all the way up to about 30% here. It's been wobbling down, I think, as both different variants have come in and also treatments have gotten better. Fewer people have been requiring mechanical ventilation. But look at this. Look at the nature of this line, and then Omicron comes, and it just plunges. So we're down to, at least in London, about 10% of COVID patients using any sort of mechanical ventilation. I don't know if they count all the patients who went in the hospital, or if these are just ones in the ICU. I don't actually know the genesis of this data any deeper than this. I can just tell you that this chart has changed a lot very recently. There's nothing like it in the entire series going back to the beginning of this whole thing in 2020. That is a straight line plummet down. And the reason it's probably not even lower is because there are still patients on ventilators from the prior variants. It's not because 10% of people with Omicron are ending up on it. It's not how I would read this chart, but we'll have to wait for more data to come in. Denmark, same sort of a thing here. You can see the explosion in cases and the explosion in deaths that they experienced way back here in the bad old days of 2020. And now they weathered these next 2 waves reasonably well. You didn't see any corresponding, not a huge uptick in deaths. So very good job managing that. Hospital system seems to be operating better than in the UK. And now we see this vast exploding cases, and they've utterly decoupled from the death line, which has gone up. It's snuck up, no question about it, but it's not even remotely on the same scale as we're seeing from the prior waves, particularly the first one, which caught them pretty flat-footed, medically speaking. Same thing we're seeing in South Africa. Cases in blue, new deaths in red. You can see that the deaths usually follow. Here's the peak in new cases. Deaths were just a little bit behind it. Here, very coincident. Here, a little bit behind again for the Delta wave. Here, there's no relationship whatsoever at the moment between cases and deaths. So unless Omicron is biding its time and it's going to, if the average onset was a couple of weeks in between case rise and death peaks in the prior waves. It ain't there with Omicron so far. Is it going to be a month or 3 months down? We don't know. But for now, I will tell you that's unlikely. It's just pretty. It's not doing anything in terms of deaths, and as well as hospitalization. South Africa median length of stay, which I put this behind. Showed this to my subscribers a while back, and also put it up on Twitter. The median stay was 10 days, but in all the prior waves going back through time. And then it's 3 days now, and this is the median hospital 3 days, so much milder. Whatever's sweeping through South Africa, which is the Omicron. And now that was the data. Now we actually have the headlines, which just came out today here. Omicron has 80% lower risk of hospitalization in South Africa. So that's what we're seeing there. And as well, France, this chart showing ICU 7 days exit rate. It's asking the question, what percentage of people who entered the ICU with COVID, how many of them were out within 7 days? And the answer is 100%. These are percentages here. So that's 20%, 40, 60, 80, 100%. So 100% of people are leaving now within 7 days, where that used to be somewhere between 20 and, say, closing in on 30, 35%. That's a huge, huge difference. I posted this and somebody said, oh, but maybe they were all dying. I was like, well, that's a cool theory, bro, but you can just go to the data. There's no huge uptick in deaths over here going on in France. Again, a minor rise, it's happening, but it's vastly lower than we're seeing from any of the prior waves, which is very good news. It's the only way to interpret it. It's just really good news. Okay, I love this. Travis Kling, I love the way Travis put this. He said here, the UK has 12 confirmed Omicron deaths out of 45,000 confirmed cases. That gives it a case fatality rate of 0.027%. That would get Omicron FDA approval. What did he mean by that? Well, the standardized mortality rates after dose 1 and 2 for Pfizer were 0.42 and 0.37%, and for Moderna were 0.35 and 0.34 after dose 2. So the FDA was like, oh my gosh, look at the standardized mortality rates. We're only 0.42, around somewhere between 0.34 and 0.42 for both Pfizer and Moderna. Those are great. We approve this drug. Maybe we should get Omicron through FDA approval, because it crushes theirs. Look at that, 0.0, call that, we'll round up, 0.03%. It has 1/10 the death rate of either of the two jabs. I think this thing should get approved. Omicron is better than Pfizer or Moderna. Just how it is. I like pointing out data when I see it. By the way, this is coming soon to a theater near you. This is a model. Models tend to be wrong a lot, but we're just going to look at this. This is over the next 3 months, and we're going here from no Omicron detected or detectable, so 0 to 0.1% incidence, all the way on up to 90 to 100% incidence. 100% means everybody's had it. And so let's play this along and see what the next 3 months look like if it continues to spread as it has been for the past month. So you can see it, there it is in South Africa, it's showing up. South Africa's getting kind of orangey, red is spreading up through Botswana. Some other place in Africa up there is getting hit. Now you can see it exploding all over the place. Now we're November 27th, 28th, November 30th, now we're December. Here we are, coming up on current day, December 22nd, here we are. It's now basically going to be at 100% incidence by the end of this month, 90 to 100% everywhere. It is the most explosive spread I've ever seen. I've never seen a virus do anything like this. Maybe we just haven't tracked them before. I don't know, but I've never seen anything like this. So best of all worlds, this is the most explosive, virulent thing you can imagine. And it's not nearly 80% less deadly or lethal than COVID. You really couldn't have asked for a lot more if you were praying on your knees for a good outcome than this as it's currently configured. By the way, are those out there who are very upset at this new development? This would be one. Eric Fagel-Ding, he is just a tireless fearmonger. Look at this. He wrote here on December 20th, breaking, first Omicron U.S. death in Texas. Singular. First Omicron death in an unvaccinated man reinfected after previously having COVID. Oh my God, he goes into war normal mode. You can just see what he said. All these unvaccinated people, even if they've had previous infections, they're going to get crushed because he really likes the vaccine only. He's never been a proponent of early treatments. He's never been a proponent of using terrain boosting things like vitamin D, etc. That's not his thing. He likes the vaccines only. So he goes out and very carefully finds model places and anecdotes where, in this case, an unvaccinated man was reinfected and he died. And then he says, following up on that a few days later, there will be countless more of these stories in the coming months if these models are correct. It's very sinister sounding, right? I just would like to remind Eric that in Houston, which happens to be in Texas, they already got to 85% seroprevalence or detectable, not seroprevalence, but detected cases at Houston Methodist. When they're detecting people come in, they have coronavirus. Which version do they have? Omicron went from 0 to 85% in just over 2 weeks. So if you're going to see a lot more deaths like this, they better be showing up soon, Eric, for your model, because they're already they've already gone red in that model we saw with the spread of this thing. So Omicron is already really, really big and hard in Texas, and we're hearing about a singular death so far. That's not bad news. That's the best news you could hope for in something like this. Because again, if we chase that singular case down, very strong odds we're going to discover that this was a person who was already very much not well, or had really been ravaged by the first round, or had a lot of comorbidities, or was elderly, or all of those things. There's a very strong chance of that. But to sort of pull from this up here, the summary might be, if you were just, into the fear, you would say, this thing's going to just crush us and we're just going to be overwhelmed. There's just going to be countless deaths. I mean, that's what he says. There will be countless more of these stories, which is death. So my mental health advice, just ignore this guy and everybody out there who wants you to be afraid, because being afraid is not good for your immune system. Having anxiety isn't good for your immune system. In fact, courage and calmness, you can help spread that. So if you're watching me, you probably already have a lot of those things anyway. You're not part of maybe this crowd quite as much, or maybe you are. Congratulations. Thank you for coming to hear the other potential side of the story. I applaud that. But if you can be not full of the anxiety that's being spread here, you're in a better chance to help those people around you whose lives literally are being corroded by anxiety and fear. I think living in abject fear is as bad as getting sick. I mean, they're both illnesses of a sort. And by the way, spreading that, here's another great divider. Current White House, they say, we are intent on not letting Omicron disrupt work and school for the vaccinated. You've done the right thing, and we will get through this. Okay, first error is Omicron, which I'll show you in just a second. It actually, whether you're vaccinated or not, it doesn't care. Honey badger virus, don't care. It attacks both groups equally. So that's the first start. So, and for the unvaccinated, you're looking at a winter of severe illness and death for yourselves, your families, and the hospitals you may soon overwhelm. That's the White House. So I think what we should do right now, we should pick up a GoFundMe and make sure these people can get an internet connection, because I used a Comcast connection to discover that the case fatality rate for this thing is 10 times better than being jabbed with a prior version. I found this. I used my internet. I really think I feel bad for the White House because they apparently don't have any access to any of this stuff. By the way, if I was gonna, let me see. I'm just gonna break out. Let me do my copy editing. Let me see if I was the yeah, no, I don't like any of that. Nope, I don't like any of this. Here, I'm rewriting the speech on the fly. I'm sorry to do all this thing on the fly. There. I think that's an appropriate speech. We'll get through this. Stiff upper lip. Let's do this. There. They just needed a little editing. I'm available. Talk to me. Okay. We'll get through this. Come on. It's the data says that. Let me be clear. It's completely irresponsible to spread this message in this way at this time. This was completely inappropriate message to put out, and I will. And oh, by the way, Alec Marinos on Twitter, I thought he captured it well. He was reading this thing, and he said, "Well, this thing checks all the boxes. It ignored natural immunity, yeah, ignored risk stratification, right? Old people, ignored any results of severity of disease, which doesn't seem to be much. Ignored the prior predictions have been abysmal. And also, it's downright effing gore. It is. So, Alexandros, good job on that. At any rate, the conclusions for this, listen, this is very simple. This is episode 40. Here are my conclusions. Omicron is a very mild version of SARS-CoV-2. And by the way, the most reliable doctors out there are reporting symptoms are indistinguishable from a common cold. Sniffles, if you even notice it, a lot of people don't even notice that they have it until they take a test. Imagine a disease so terrible that you have to test even though you have it, and people are still terrified by that. I've heard stories lately of people saying, I tested positive for this thing, I feel fine, and my mom's blowing up my phone every 20 minutes wondering if I'm dead yet, because that fear is really taken over. The deaths are vastly lower from Omicron than any prior variant that we've seen. Hospitalizations are both lower and shorter, and fewer in number and shorter. By the way, being fully vaccinated does not prevent, and in fact, according to Dutch data, it accelerates the catching of Omicron. People with 2 jabs in them are 40% more likely to catch this thing than people who are triple jabbed or people who are completely unvaccinated. For whatever reason, we have some theories about why that is, but that's what the data says so far. And we see that in the UK data as well, not completely as obviously. Below a certain age, unvaccinated people catch this a little bit more. Above a certain age, unvaccinated people catch it a little more, but between 2 big fat age bands, which is basically, I think, from like 30 to 60, vaccinated people are catching it at a far higher rate than unvaccinated people. Go figure out why. But one thing you can't say is we have a credible argument to say being vaccinated, being fully vaccinated, is protective against catching and or transmitting Omicron. Omicron, this is great news that it outcompetes other variants. That's UK data. That's really the purple bars squeezing out bars, which were the other variants. That purple bar Omicron that it's preferentially and nudging out the other variants is a great thing because these are the bad variants and it outcompetes them. So on that basis alone, it's going to have a very positive impact on hospitalizations and deaths, period, all by itself. As Travis Kling said, it actually is operating and may outcompete the vaccines in terms of utility, in terms of health protectiveness, in terms of all kinds of things. That's the way we're seeing it right now. By the way, it'll all be over in about 2 to 3 months at most because it blasts through a society incredibly quickly. I've never seen anything like it. It's really astonishing. So all in all, this is really the very best we could have hoped for. Hey, happy holidays and happy new year. This means to me that I'm suggested before was a possibility and to get a little stronger with it now and just state it outright. Omicron spells the end of the COVID crisis. That's what the data says. So we could still be surprised, right? In parens, just below. Unless a worse variant does come along, always possible. Immune escape variants because of a faulty, flawed, leaky vaccine strategy. It's always possible. But for now, what we're seeing, Omicron is the real deal. So this is the end of the COVID crisis unless we get that worse variant, or politicians just can't let go of all this tasty power and control that they've managed to seize in this time, right? So a couple of countries out there, Australia, Canada, you're going to have a hard time crawling out from under this because you've got a real strong commitment to this being terrible and awful. But listen, this data on Omicron should break the spell. It really should. We should be asking, who's afraid of the sniffles, right? In the most cases, right? All right. Please ignore those fear mongers. The data doesn't even remotely support their positions. That's how it is right now. If the data changes, I'll change, and you should too. But for now, the data is coming in and confirming and reconfirming every week or day that ticks by without some mysterious explosion in illness or morbidity around this disease, around Omicron, the better it all looks. So we are pretty deep down in this story right now. We're a month in, and we don't see that. Pretty solid saying this thing is over. So I strongly recommend stop. That's the media. Media, time to catch TF up on this whole story. Please putting out articles. By the way, I've seen media outlets start to do this, saying things like, does Omicron spell the end? But most of them are really hyper committed, particularly those that we'll call them the blue checkmark media, are really seen into the power structure. I'm having a hard time letting go of that fear narrative, and I really wish that they would. By the way, this is for your little survival media. The more people you're going to lose, and when your readers find out how badly you misled them, and then how slow you are to catch up to the true nature of this story, I think the more people you're going to lose. And I mean lose, like I'll never subscribe to you again. Sorry, right? So, little pro tip there. And politicians, they just have to, politicians, you got to stop this. You got to stop locking people up and ruin economies. You want to ruin somebody's economy and, which does extraordinary damage, you better have a darn reason for that. And again, maybe people will or will not notice and may not be in a mood to reelect you if that happens. That's what I see coming. So there's lots we can do about this. The first thing is, I'm not so convinced that these politicians are going to release their hold on things, which is why we're holding, I want you to save a couple of dates. First, we're holding an annual seminar, Peak Prosperity. My company, we hold a great seminar. I'm so excited this year. Look who we've got coming this year. They're going to be presenting virtually. You'll have a chance to ask live questions and answers. This is a live virtual, so you don't have to get up and travel and do all sorts of crazy things like that. You can sit in the comfort of your home. This is Saturday, Sunday. It will be recorded, so if you sign up, you can always watch it at whatever pace you want. But if you show up live, there's a chance to be asking questions of all these amazing people here. So if you go to this URL down here, you can find out more about it and really what the agenda is and what each of these people is going to talk about. Save the dates, plural, because there's another date coming up, January 23rd, which is on Sunday. I'm going to let you read these words off of here. I'm going to tell you that there's something fun showing up on that date. And there's a lot of great people who are involved in this thing as well. And it's time for the United States to join the rest of the world in saying, hey, enough. And we're peaceful people. We're ready to get back on with our lives and ready to make that known. So this is an extraordinary event. I'm being cagey about it because you wouldn't believe the amount of censorship that's already come down around this concept. Just leave it at that. Hey, that's all I have to tell you today. Reminder, there's always a part of this. And in part 2, I'm going to be going over a little more about exactly how this whole thing developed the way it did, who was really responsible for this thing developing. And by the way, as you know, I had an organic incident. This virus did not come from nature. 99.99% sure about that. It came out of the lab, and then a bunch of people did use it for their own power and benefit. We'll talk about that because it has a lot of implications for how the future is going to unfold. So we're going to talk about part 2. You can buy Peak Prosperity. That's playing right now. If you click up on this link over here, that'll get you there, and you can join the conversation. We'd love to have. But first, if you're interested in the seminar, check that out because we've got a great bundle deal for people who want to both join and would like to attend the seminar. Really good thing for you to check out there. All right. That's all I have for now. And I'm just going to wish you Merry Christmas, absolute best of holidays. Have a really happy new year. Good news, Omicron is spelling the end of COVID so we can get back on with our lives. Best news I've had in a long time. All right. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.